Let's understand data types and type conversion. If you're defining a variable, for example, like username, and you set this equal to a certain username like NPC, then you have a data type. Even though you do not explicitly state this data type right here, you automatically define the data type by setting this equal to a certain value. And in our case, as you can see, this here is a text. Why is it a text? Because text is usually inside of those quotation marks right here. So if you use starting and ending quotation marks, this is a text. And a text in programming is defined as a string. So this right here is a string. So whenever you see those quotation marks, you know this is going to be a string. And you can also use single quotation marks. And this is the exact same. If you think about an age, for example, this is called an integer in programming, or short int. An int allows you to store whole numbers. So the age, for example. So you could, for example, imagine an age being equal to 118. So we have a pretty old person right here. And this variable age now stores an integer. The next data type that is important is a float, like so. And this allows you to store decimal numbers. If you think about money, for example, let's imagine you have $1.99 left for the entire month. Then this is going to be a decimal number. And in PHP, you say that this is going to be a floating point number. You also have booleans. And a boolean is pretty similar to a light switch. A light switch is either on or off, and a boolean is either true or false. And a boolean can be used to describe all sorts of things. If you think about rain, for example, it is either raining or it is not raining. So rain can either be true or it can be false. Imagine we're having the rain variable, and we can set this one to true, for example. So now it is raining. But it is also possible that rain is equal to false. So this is what you call a boolean in programming. And if you do not want to define a value at all, you can also say that you want to have a null value. Null just means no value. We could, for example, say that the variable isCool is equal to null. The variable isCool does not have a value yet. Now let's take a look at type conversion. Imagine we are having a num1, which is equal to a string that has the value 14, and a num2 that is going to be equal to maybe 15. So let's save this one, and let's echo out num1 plus num2. So we're going to save this, reload the page, and now we're getting 29. So even though this here is technically a string, so text, and this here is a number, so an integer, we're getting the result 29. So even though those are two different data types, this seems to work in PHP. And the reason for this is that PHP implicitly converts the string to a number. So it converts this num1 string, so text, to a number, and then adds 14 to 15. So this is implicit typecasting. There's also the option to explicitly cast a type. So imagine we are having num3, for example, and this is equal to 7.99. Now let's echo out num3 right here, so num3. And let's take a look at the result. We're getting 7.99 because that is our value, that is our floating point value. But now we can also cast this value to an integer, for example. And if you think about my definition of integers, I said that an integer is able to store whole numbers as a value. This here is obviously not a whole number. This is a floating point number. So let me reload the page and see what is going to happen. And as you can see, we're now getting 7. So this right here now gets explicitly casted to an integer, so to a whole number. So we're seeing this whole number right here. There's also the option to say bool, for example. So we could reload the page. Now we're getting 1, which is equal to true. We could also say this is a string. We would not see anything. But you get the idea. You can do pretty much anything by using explicit type conversion. And this right here will get useful later on when we work with forms.